Live from the city that never sleeps. 17 miles from Madison Square Garden, New York City. It's America at Night with Rich Valdez, America's favorite late-night talk program, featuring interesting guests from around the world and calls from across America. And now, here is your host, Rich Valdez.
Hi there, good evening, and what's up, America? Happy Friday. I am Rich Valdez, Valdez with an S, at Rich Valdez on all of the social media. Welcome to the Friday night edition of our program. We are live, we are national. It's a blessing to be here 7 minutes past the top of the hour. Here's the number if you want to join us on our late night national town hall conversation. 833-482-5337, 833-4 Valdez. And of course, I think the biggest story of the day is the Supreme Court, right? We talked about some of the stuff that came out yesterday, but boy, what a huge win for the Constitution today, a huge win for the American people. And of course, President Trump taking a victory lap on our behalf. And it truly was a very, very big day for just so many successes. I mean, let's just talk. 5 big cases today. We've got the 6-3 ruling that district judges can't freeze a sitting president's policies across the country with nationwide injunctions. That was big. They can only block it for people in the case that they're hearing. What else do we have? That's big for the border, big for deportations, big for birthright citizenship. You've also got parents. Parents are now allowed to opt their kids out. 6-3, parents can say no to forced LGBTQ lessons in the classroom. Local schools cannot block your parents' a parental right to protect your kids' values. So parents just got their power back. You would think we didn't have to go and sue and have the Supreme Court decide that parents should have power, but we did, and we do. What else we got? States can cut Planned Parenthood funding. That was another lawsuit that was up there today. 6-3 decision. States don't have the ability to just stop, right? This is the state having the control to say, look, less money for these types of grants. And this is up to the state, right? And it's a states' rights issue. So good on them for that one. And let me see what else we got here. Another 6-3 decision here. Age checks on pornographic websites, right? This was the Free Speech Coalition case. And you want to make sure you never infringe on free speech. And lamentably, porn is a part of that in some ways. That's how they've always kind of gotten by. But in this case, as our guest last night pointed out, that they would probably err on the side of allowing the Texas rule or Texas statute to maintain, and they did. Texas can force pornographic websites to verify age, helping kids stay safe while online. Big win again for parents, and good on them for that. So President Trump, like I said, taking a victory lap, just sharing a little bit about his perspective. And I want you to hear what he had to say. Check out cut number 1. Listen to this.
This morning, the Supreme Court has delivered a monumental victory for the Constitution, the separation of powers, and the rule of law in striking down the excessive use of nationwide injunctions to interfere with the normal functioning of the executive branch. The Supreme Court has stopped the presidency itself. That's what they've done. And really, it's been an amazing period of time this last hour. There are people elated all over the country. I've seen such happiness and spirit. Sometimes you don't see that, but this case is very important. I was elected on a historic mandate, but in recent months we've seen a handful of radical left judges effectively try to overrule the rightful powers of the president to stop the American people from getting the policies that they voted for in record numbers. It was a grave threat to democracy, frankly, and instead of merely ruling on the immediate cases before them, these judges have attempted to dictate the law for the entire nation. In practice, this meant that if any one of the nearly 700 federal judges disagreed with the policy of a duly elected president of the United States, he or she could block that policy from going into effect or at least delay it for many years, tie it up in the court system. This was a colossal abuse of power which never occurred in American history prior to recent decades, and we've been hit with more nationwide injunctions than were issued in the entire 20th century together. Think of it, more than the entire 20th century, me. I'm grateful to the Supreme Court for stepping in and solving this very, very big and complex problem, and they've made it very simple.
So that's, again, President Trump saluting the Supreme Court, celebrating a win here. And again, this isn't a win for him per se. This is what I think President Trump's been doing all along, is fighting for what is right. In reality, right, this benefits him and his administration because these are policies he's put forward. But I think the underlying issue here is these are policies that make sense, right? This strengthens the Constitution. It doesn't continue to erode the Constitution. And that's important. Does the Constitution work without a separation of powers? It doesn't. And this is why you have to have judges that look at things the right way. And I'm grateful. I am grateful for these decisions as well, because it marks at least it feels like it's marking a time where we have now stemmed the tide, where things are changing. It's a new day, right? It's morning in America, that type of thing. Not to be melodramatic, but it feels good. It feels good to know that right is right and wrong is wrong. And some judge somewhere just can't come and say, no, that's not accurate. President Trump signing an executive order to outline what birthright citizenship is. This is good, right? Because right now the nationwide injunction was crushing him on every level. So congratulations to America. Congratulations to our Constitution. Congratulations to our president, El Trompito Donaldus Magnus, the 45th and 47th president of these United States, El Presidente, on a job well done. Great lawyers and great effort to defend the Constitution against the radical left who's trying to just thin it out as much as they can. And on some other news, Rwanda and Congo have been at war. They signed a peace deal at the White House, President Trump intervening and making peace in Africa. President Trump intervening with Iran and Israel, making peace there with a ceasefire. President Trump, what was that, 2 or 3 weeks ago, between Israel and Pakistan, making peace. That's 1, 2, 3 conflicts that you could think of. And then you want to add a little icing on the cake. We've now got a deal signed with China, a trade deal. Fantastic, right? I think it is. So that's what's going on that front. Now, I want to get into a number of these Supreme Court cases at length because, well, there's a lot to discuss. We discussed a bunch of them yesterday. I want to talk about the outcomes and the implications for everyday Americans of these cases and the outcomes and the implications for the administration. So keep it locked right here. We have a number of really good guests that are going to weigh in on this. And plus, we're going to get to your calls. It is Friday night. And I want to speak to as many of you as I can because I am going to be away for a few days next week. And we'll have some great guest hosts that'll be sitting in with you. But I want to talk to as many of you as I can while I got you. So you know the number, 833-4-VALDEZ.
This is America at Night with Rich Valdez.
Well, thank you, Rich, and thank you for everything. I know you very well, and I listen, but I have a lot of people that listen, and they love your show, and I appreciate it very much.
America at Night with Rich Valdez.
Americans are finally getting what they voted for. No longer will we have rogue judges striking down President Trump's policies across the entire nation. No longer. Today, in the 6-3 opinion, Justice Barrett correctly holds that the district court lacks authority to enter nationwide or universal injunctions. These lawless injunctions gave relief to everyone in the world instead of the parties before the court. As the Supreme Court held today, they turned district courts into the imperial judiciary. Active liberal judges have used these injunctions to block virtually all of President Trump's policies. To put this in perspective, there are 94 federal judicial districts. 5 of those districts throughout this country held 35 of the nationwide injunctions. Think about that. 94 districts and 35 out of the 40 opinions with nationwide injunctions came from 5 liberal districts in this country. No longer.
That, of course, is Attorney General Pam Bondi discussing the outcome of the nationwide injunctions, which affects many cases, not the least of which is the birthright citizenship case. And I want to talk about that as well as some of the other cases with President Trump's attorney, Jesse Binnall, partner at the Binnall Law Group. Jesse Binnall, welcome back.
Rich, thanks so much for having me again.
You bet. So let's talk about this. Tell us what the implications are of this case, both for the American people and for the administration, in particular when it comes to birthright citizenship.
Well, the most important holding of this decision really isn't about birthright citizenship today. What it's about is the power of district court judges. And as you just heard from that clip from Attorney General Bondi, you have hundreds and hundreds of district court judges all across the country, and it's their job to be first up in as a trial court in hearing disputes. It is their job to determine the rights of the parties that are in front of them. It is not their job to supplement the executive branch of the government in making political decisions that are going to apply to all Americans. And so what this decision did is recognize the fact that these universal injunctions that Justice Barrett wrote so eloquently about today are very new to our country. These aren't things that go back to the founding era. They're things that have been around for 40 or 50 years. And even then were used sparingly, really, until they started trying to use them aggressively against President Trump. So you have these universal injunctions, and the Supreme Court has said that is not an appropriate action for a district court judge to take. There's no constitutional basis for them to take these actions. So really, it's going to have a big impact on President Trump now being able to get his policies through without having these rogue political judges standing in his way. And
I know that a lot of this stemmed from his executive order on birthright citizenship and how they used this I'm going to call it a scheme, right? This abuse of power on the nationwide injunction to slow him down. What do you think happens here on out? Is he now able to I guess, enact this executive order without any further interference, or what?
Well, what you're going to see now on the birthright citizenship question is courts will hear arguments regarding this legal issue, and they will determine the issues as to the particular plaintiffs that decide to sue on it. Not everyone in the entire world that might be impacted by it, but by the particular plaintiffs in a case. And it will percolate its way up through the lower courts, through the circuit courts of appeal, and eventually that actual question on birthright citizenship will make it to the Supreme Court. And I think the arguments are very, very strong that President Trump is absolutely right here, legally speaking, and that birthright citizenship, the way that it has been interpreted here in these past years, where you can have, the anchor babies, is not something that is mandated or in any way required by the Constitution, and we can start to put a stop to that.
Outstanding. Now, I want to move a little bit beyond that into some of the other areas here where nationwide injunctions were used, because they also use this in the area of immigration with respect to Kilmar Abrego Garcia and others. How do you expect the administration to be able to move forward? What's the impact that the American people can expect?
Well, I think the impact that the American people really demand right now is that these activist judges not try to play politics while wearing their judicial robes. Is that going to completely stop now? It won't, because, for instance, when you have individual plaintiffs like Garcia, you're still going to have some extremely radical left-wing judges like we saw in that case, who are going to attempt to try to do foreign policy on behalf of the United States, which is just absolutely insane. And so you're still going to see instances of that, but it won't have universal impact on everyone that is, similarly situated. And so that is the good news. The bad news is that we're still going to see judges that are doing as much as they can to thwart the will of the American people in electing Donald Trump. And, in a true Orwellian fashion, they'll do it while they're claiming that they're trying to protect democracy. So apparently in their mind, the way to protect democracy is to undermine the agenda of the democratically elected president of the United States. And so in order to really get some controls on this, what needs to happen is Congress needs to start to enter the fight. We have a Republican Congress right now. It's just unfortunately many members of the Republican Congress don't have the courage that's sometimes necessary in order to push through some extremely important legislation to, for instance, take away one of the things I think is so important is we need to start limiting the jurisdiction of the federal judges in Washington, D.C. They think that, because the government happens to be in Washington, D.C., that they can rule on basically anything and everything under the sun. And that's an extremely left-wing court that was remade almost entirely by Obama over his 8 years in office. And so, people know that's one of the 5 judicial districts that Attorney General Bondi was just talking about in that clip. People know that if you can bring a complaint in Washington, D.C., that the Trump derangement syndrome that lives in the chambers of that courthouse means that they're almost virtually assured in many cases to get the relief that they're seeking to try to undermine President Trump.
What do you think needs to be done to really cement these reforms that you're talking about, these changes?
We need courageous members of Congress in order to step up and say this is something that's important. We're going to put everything on the line in order to push through some of these jurisdictional changes to the court, and for instance, make it so that when it comes to the American bureaucracy, it's not expected that these cases will be brought in Washington, D.C., but these cases should be brought in America, real America. And I think most of us know that Washington, D.C. is not real America. Washington, D.C. is a place that exists for its own purposes in many ways, and that's to fleece the American taxpayer.
Yeah,
and so we need to have that jurisdictional fight.
Well, Jesse Binnall, stand by. We're going to come right back and continue the conversation about the rest of these cases, how parents got their rights back, and some of the other cases that came out today. Folks, we're coming right back with attorney for President Trump and partner at the Binnall Law Group, Jesse Binnall. Don't go anywhere. I'm Rich Valdez.
America at Night with Rich Valdez.
Religious liberty and whether parents should be informed and be able to opt their children out from reading books in the classroom that go against their faith. Shannon Bream is at the Supreme Court. We were watching for this one. What's the verdict?
We were, Dana. So this brought together a coalition of parents of different religious faiths and backgrounds who said there used to be a rule in this particular school district that would let them know when there were books that dealt with issues that may be in conflict with their religious faith. Well, so many parents were opting out that the school board and the school district quit doing it. Well, 6-3 today in a decision by Justice Alito, they said these parents have earned at least a preliminary injunction. So while this case plays out, they said the board has to notify them about a book that's in question or anything similar so that their kids can be excused if it's in conflict with their faith. He says, as we've explained, without that, parents are left this choice: either risk their child's exposure to burdensome instruction or pay substantial sums for alternative educational services. Because at one point, Justice Jackson, during the arguments, had said, why don't they just go to a different school? Why don't you put them in private school or homeschool them? Justice Alito and others saying that's not practical for a lot of people. The dissent by Justice Sotomayor, joined by Justices Kagan and Jackson, says today's ruling threatens the essence of public education. She says it's not about bringing kids together to learn about a particular faith, but a range of concepts and views that reflect our entire society. Exposure to new ideas has always been a vital part of that project until now. The dissenters didn't think that the parents should get the opt-out. Justice Alito and the majority say they should.
That is Shannon Bream and Dana Perino on the Fox News Channel talking about the case here with the LGBTQ stuff. And this is an interesting one because it's not specifically about that. It's really about parents' rights. And I want to bring back Jesse Binnall to help us make sense of it all. Jesse Binnall, help us understand this one, because I think one would have thought that parents always had their rights, but that wasn't the case until today, that the court actually clarifying that.
Well, I mean, I think that's right. Parents always have had those rights, and that's what I think Justice Alito's opinion today really lays out, is the fact that those rights have always existed. It's these out-of-control school boards that have been infringing on those rights. And they've been infringing on those rights because so many parents don't want their children subjected to this. I mean, in many cases, just virtual pornography. And it really is something that is just destroying public school in this country right now. And the unfortunate thing is there are so many schools in this country that are just absolutely set on indoctrinating our children. And so this, I think, is an extremely important decision today. And, Justice Jackson would be the first to say that you couldn't use the reasoning that she suggested, that parents can just pull their kids out of school and, put them in private school or homeschooling them, or et cetera, if a public school wanted to have prayer, for instance, or, wanted to have some sort of sermon in the classroom. That's just something that the Supreme Court has long held is not allowable. And we can talk about, whether or not that's a good or bad thing. But Justice Jackson would be the first to say that you would, not be able to tell parents that, well, if they don't like that, they can vote with their feet and take their kids someplace else. Yet in this case, when it comes to, this woke ideology, which really is more of a cult than just an ideology, it's really a religion in and of itself. Letting school administrators try to force these extreme beliefs on children is something that should be heavily restricted, and it is up to parents to make the final decisions about what their children should be exposed to. And that's what Justice Alito, I think, properly recognized today, and his colleagues on the court.
Jesse Binnall, in a case like this, and again, a non-lawyer, just somebody on the sidelines looking at this, one would have thought this isn't something that should even go to court, but yet it rose to the highest court of the land. With a case like this, should we expect more, or does this kind of create a precedent that will slow things down, at least in this particular area?
I hope it will slow things down, but I think what you're going to see by these left-wing school boards and school administrators is they're immediately going to try to find ways to get around this decision. They're going to try to find ways to make it difficult for parents to opt their children out, basically find ways to embarrass their children, probably, if they're opted out. They'll start doing things like that. So I think, unfortunately, we are probably going to see more cases like this. I hope that the lower courts start to read the tea leaves from the Supreme Court and start putting an end to this nonsense, but we'll see how the litigation plays out.
Now, what did you think about the difference of opinion between Associate Justices Jackson and Barrett?
There's a very technical legal phrase for what Justice Barrett did today in regards to Justice Jackson, and it's called a bench slap. And that was a bench slap for the ages. And I don't have it in front of me right now, but basically she said that Justice Jackson's arguments can be dispatched very briefly, and she spent only a very small time, pointing out that Justice Jackson's opinion was not based on neither the law nor judicial precedent nor the Constitution itself, and that while Justice Jackson, rallies against a imperial executive, she embraces a imperial judiciary in her opinion. And so it was, I think, an excellent opinion from Justice Barrett today. I don't always agree with Justice Barrett, but today her opinion was just outstanding. And Justice Jackson's opinion was an embarrassment. It really was not based on the law. It was based on feelings and emotion, and that's really not what the Supreme Court, should be doing. It makes you remember the good old days of Justice Scalia and Justice Ginsburg, who disagreed on many, many things, but it was, an intellectual feast when they were together, and they were able to have a banter together and discuss and debate big ideas in a good, respectful way. But when you have folks like Justice Jackson who play much more the role of politician than jurist, and use emotion more than logic, it puts us in an unfortunate place in many ways, and in other ways, quite frankly. It's nice that it's her there and not somebody like the justice she replaced, Justice Breyer, who I disagreed with strongly, but is an intellectual giant, and somebody that, when you get in that conference room, figured would find ways to convince his colleagues. And when you see this kind of appeal to emotion that you get from Justice Jackson, I don't think she's convincing anybody when she gets in that conference room.
Yeah. Bench slap. That was a good one. I hadn't heard that before. I wasn't familiar with this terminology. Outstanding. Jesse Binnall, I want you to let everybody know who's listening how they can keep up to speed with you and how they can learn more about the work you're doing.
They can always follow me on social media, on whether it's X or Truth Social. Pretty much all of them. I'm on there at J Binnall. That's JBINNALL. And they can always go to my firm's website at Binnall.com to follow up on what we're doing as well.
Outstanding. Well, Jesse Binnall, you're a gentleman, a scholar, and a patriot. I want to thank you for being here. Godspeed to you, sir.
Thanks so much, Rich.
You bet. Anytime. And amigos, your thoughts, your calls, your reactions coming up. Plus, Trump breaks ties with Canada. More on that straight ahead.
This is America at Night with Rich Valdez. Call now, 833-4-VALDEZ. That's 833-482-5337. 833-4-VALDEZ. That's Valdez with an S. Now, 833-4-VALDEZ. That's 833-482-5337. 833-4-VALDEZ. That's Valdez with an S.
Major breaking news this hour. President Donald Trump says he is ending trade discussions with Canada effective immediately. In a post on Truth Social, Trump said, "We have just been informed that Canada, a very difficult country to trade with, including the fact that they have charged our farmers as much as 400% tariffs for years on dairy products, has just announced that they are putting a digital services tax on our American technology companies, which is a direct and blatant attack on our country. They're obviously copying the European Union, which has done the same thing and is currently under discussion with us also. Based on this egregious tax, we are hereby terminating all discussions on trade with Canada effective immediately. We will let Canada know the tariff that they will be paying to do business with the United States of America within the next 7-day period. Thank you all for your attention to this matter. This is big breaking news that's coming in this hour. President Donald Trump declaring that all efforts that have been put in terms of a trade agreement with Canada are being terminated effective immediately. And this has got to do with the digital tax that Canada has imposed.
So that, again, President Trump, if you didn't get it from the message there, from the clip, has ended trade talks with Canada. And this, I think, is pretty clear, right? Again, he put on Truth Social that they put a digital services tax on our American technology companies, which is a direct and blatant attack on our country. And this is Trump walking away from the table. This is part of the negotiation. We're going to make a deal, but not on these terms. And I love it. I love the fact that he brings in his New York real estate tycoon sense of negotiating to Washington and to the world stage, because I think sometimes you need that. That's how you shake things up, like we saw with NATO yesterday, right? The first time he went to NATO, Angela Merkel was there, and the rest of the clowns that were all like chuckling as he was saying, I think you don't pay enough. You don't pay into this. They looked at him like, who are you? You know? And he let them know exactly who he was. They found out. And now NATO coming around him yesterday saying, sure, you know what? We're going to double, 100% increase what we do. We're going to go for not even more, right? They went from 2% to 5%. Stellar. Outstanding. Now, of course, there's some apologists out there that are saying, oh, some of these countries, they can't even pay the 5%. How are they going to do it? They're whining. I say break out the violins. You can't change the rule for the exceptions, right? Everybody's got to rise to the challenge. But this is Trump negotiating on behalf of the United States, putting us in a more solid position. Yesterday, we talked about how there was $88 billion in tariffs and how tariffs have not broken the bank. We also talked yesterday how the tariffs were, expected to break the stock market. But instead, they didn't break the stock market. They leveled off after a while, right? There was a couple of bad days. They had their doom and gloom. And voila, same thing with the dropping the bombs on Iran. It's going to break everything. It didn't break everything either. So on Wednesday, there was a report on CNN. It was a little lengthy, but I don't want to chop it up too much because I want you to really get a good sense of it. And I want you to listen to this. This is Vanessa Cavins on CNN.
Minutes away from the closing bell on Wall Street, and the S&P 500 closed yesterday on the cusp of a record high. Right now, kind of flatlining, down just a teensy-weensy bit. CNN's Vanessa Yurkevich joins us now with more. Vanessa, this is really impressive given where the market was not that long ago.
Yeah, really a remarkable story on Wall Street. We've been watching the S&P very closely all day as it has been flirting with a new record, the last one set back in February. But it is remarkable because at the low of the S&P, it had shed $9.8 trillion in April, almost entering bear market territory. And it's nearly now recovered all of its losses. And just look at the markets. You see the Dow, the S&P, and the NASDAQ on your screen. That dramatic V-shaped drop and then recovery. I was talking to a chief investment strategist, Sam Stovall of CFRA, who told me that usually it takes about 4 months for markets to enter the low.
Now, again, it doesn't end there. She's going to continue. Listen to this.
For a recovery to get back to even. That happened in half the time. So it really is remarkable. And essentially investors, what they have seen is that after the 90-day pause on reciprocal tariffs and after the tariff rates on China were reduced from 145% to 30%, they really believed that the fear of a recession was taken off the table, and that maybe some of these tariffs had more bark than bite. And also, Boris, just recently, the conflict in the Middle East between Iran and Israel, well, what happened over the weekend was that the U.S. took out nuclear sites in Iran. And so Wall Street woke up Monday morning and they were relieved. Investors were relieved. So you saw a little bit of a relief rally happening today. But we're watching down to the last minute to see if the S&P will hit a new record today, Boris.
Well, the S&P has definitely hit a new record because, again, that was 2 days ago, and I'd been sandbagging that report because I just didn't get to it over the days. And guess what? Here we go. We've got the S&P just here 5 hours ago on Market Watch. S&P closes at all-time high. Let me give you the full headline there. U.S. stocks shake off Trump's remarks about Canada. They realize whatever Trump says, stick with him. He knows what he's doing. CNN. America's incredible stock market rebound is complete as S&P 500 and NASDAQ hit records high. That's 6 hours ago on CNN. 6 hours ago on NBC News. S&P 500 hits an all-time high, rebounding to its level when Trump's second term began. The sharp reversal from spring lows masks the opportunity cost of Trump's policies, which preempted higher gains, blah, 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 blah. So, again, same thing. Making records here. and there's more. I'm not going to get into all of those. But this is what's happening when you make America great again, right? This is what happens when you stick to your guns and you tell people what you're going to do and you stick to it. And there you go. So I just wanted to share that because there were so many people that were doom and gloom. Today there was a report, earlier today I was reading it. It said GE to move the manufacturing of washing machines from China to the United States, creating almost 1,000 new jobs. And the headline made sure to say, this is not what you think. This is not because of Trump's tariffs. After you read the article, you get to the reason they say that is because the CEO of GE, or their parent company, Hayer, says this is not necessarily because of President Trump's tariffs, but they definitely accelerated our decision. So then it's totally about that, because if you were going to make this decision 3 years from now, and you're making them now because of the tariffs. So they're just playing coy, and they're trying to play with the truth. But the reality is, but for the tariffs, we probably would not have seen that happen. So 800 or 1,000 new jobs, outstanding. Appliances made in America, outstanding. God bless America. I think it's great. $88 billion in new revenue for the government, for people who want to pay things, that coming from overseas, but with tariffs. Super. That's your choice, right? That's a true free market, and I think it's fantastic. And we've cut our trade deficit in half, the one that everybody was crying about just a few months ago. So what's the famous meme? Trump was right again. Your calls and more right now.
This is America at Night with Rich Valdez.
All right, amigos, with seconds to go on the clock, I want to go to Paul, Boise, Idaho, streaming the show tonight. Go right ahead, Paul. Happy Friday.
Thanks for taking my call, Rich.
Sir.
Trump deserves every accolade that he gets for the job that he's doing. And it just goes to show you he's got a tremendous team on whatever position it is that they're playing for him. They're doing an outstanding job. And, I love seeing a president take charge, make a call, and have it come to fruition.
Listen, amen to that, Paul. I appreciate the call. Have a great weekend. I'm going to miss you next week. And, amigos, we continue with the program, so keep it locked right here. And anybody who's jumping off the train here, I say to you, hasta la próxima. Take care, good night, and God bless you, America. I'm Rich Valdez. Everybody else, I'll be right back.
Live from the city that never sleeps. 17 miles from Madison Square Garden, New York City. It's America at Night with Rich Valdez, America's favorite late-night talk program, featuring interesting guests from around the world and calls from across America. And now, here is your host, Rich Valdez.
Hi there, good evening, and what's up, America? I am Rich Valdez, Valdez with an S, at Rich Valdez on all of the social media. Your liberty-loving Latino amigo, happy to be here with you this Friday night, 7 minutes past the top of the hour. Here's the phone number if you want to give us a call in our late-night national town hall conversation, 833-482-5337, 833-4-Valdez. And the golden age of America is here. Stocks are at a record high. You've got the S&P hitting the highest number. You've got the NASDAQ through the roof. And what else? What else? You've got the biggest day, or at least one of the biggest days for the Constitution in terms of the Supreme Court we've seen in a hot minute. It's all here. Like Trump said, are you tired of winning yet? I am not. Big, beautiful bill scheduled to go before the Senate very soon, this weekend, I believe. And I think it's going to pass. So guess what? No tax on tips, no tax on overtime. Doesn't sound too bad to me. Making the Trump tax cuts permanent. That means you get to keep more of your paycheck. Man, this guy's bad, right? These evil red hat Republican people. This orange man with his yellow hair. He's so evil. He's so bad. Anyway, I'll take this bad any day of the week. This is good stuff. 3 different major conflicts ended. India and Pakistan. Rwanda and the Democratic Republic of Congo, and of course Israel and Iran, and President Trump also announcing that he just can't do business with Canada, putting this on Truth Social earlier this afternoon. We've just been informed that Canada, a very difficult country to trade with, including the fact that they've charged our farmers as much as 400% tariffs for years on dairy products, has just announced that they're putting a digital services tax on our American technology companies, which is a direct and blatant attack on our country. They are obviously copying the European Union, which has done the same thing and is currently under discussion with us. Also, based on this egregious tax, we're hereby terminating all discussions on trade with Canada. Effective immediately, we will let Canada know that the tariff that they will be paying to do business with the United States of America within the next 7-day period. So they don't know what it is, but it's coming their way. Thank you for your attention to this matter. El Trompito not playing games, walking away from the table here because he's done. He's done with the Canadians. And again, this is not a one-sided deal. We do a lot of trade with Canada, right? We get a lot of paper goods from Canada, a lot. I think one of the ways that we've protected our trees and our own paper supply has been by buying it in bulk from Canada forever. Almost every paper product, or at least a whole lot of paper products, from paper plates to that little cardboard cylinder that's in your toilet paper to all sorts of paper goods, are Canadian. So a big source of our lumber and a big source of our paper. So we're going to see. Hopefully they get in line and we start doing deals just like everybody else has been doing deals. Speaking of deals, Trump officially signing the trade deal with China. Right? It had been agreed to a while back. China says it will review and approve eligible licenses for items subject to export control rules. The United States will correspondingly cancel a range of existing restrictive measures imposed against Beijing. And President Trump saying that we just signed a deal with China yesterday. So that's the latest on that one. Now, I think that's a good thing because we've become very accustomed to doing trade with China, a lot of it in big numbers. And I think we should limit that trade. Honestly, I think if we could eliminate it, it would be great. But I also realize the cost that comes with that, right? I mean, you find me something that's made out of plastic that didn't come from China in one way or another. Very few items. Matter of fact, China has the market cornered on manufacturing with so many goods. even in so many places, right? I mean, you've got manufacturing that comes out of Mexico, that comes out of Vietnam, Bangladesh. A lot of this is Chinese manufacturing just in those places because of licensing deals that they've put together. So I get it. I don't want to do business with China. I don't want to help China. But I understand that the country does a lot of business with China. And am I prepared to see a dollar store go away permanently? Sure I am. Do most people want that? Probably not. So, we don't have to be all as extreme and draconian as I am. And clearly Trump isn't. He's looking to make a deal. And that's why when people tell me, Rich, you should run for office, I say, you should run away from me because I would be an absolute nut job on certain things, like China in particular. I have no interest in doing business with China, come what may. I don't want to deal with the Chinese. And because I don't like communists, even reformed communists like Putin, not my cup of tea. So anyway, where was I? We're talking about a bunch of things. Tonight, I want to talk about America. I want to talk about the 4th of July. Happy birthday, America, right? We're a week away from America's birthday. And as I mentioned in the previous hour, that I will be away next week. And, of course, Friday we'll have a special episode for the 4th of July. So you guys are going to be in very capable hands with a number of our favorite guest hosts here. But I want to take a moment to wish America a happy birthday and to speak with you all, we the people, because America is so unique, right? It's really one of these places that, while I've never lived anywhere else, but I can tell you I've met people from other places, and, you visit other places, and you realize there's things that we can do here that we can't do in other places. And not to say that everything is better here, but so much is. I mean, there's an old saying about our judicial system. It's not the best. It's not perfect, but it's certainly the best, right? There isn't one that's better. And I agree with that as long as it's working, right? When it's not working, when you see lawfare running amok, when you see the types of things that we saw up until today, where a district judge could hold the president of the United States hostage, or at least hold his agenda hostage to their whims. And a whimsical judge is not who anybody elected to be president, not a Democrat, not a Republican. They're not it. So the fact that we've gotten to where we are and we've had all of these victories today, I think are really good. And President Trump spoke to some of those victories today with respect to many cases, in particular the nationwide injunctions, as well as how that affects some of his policies like the executive order on birthright citizenship and sanctuary cities. So check this one out. President Trump, number 2.
Thanks to this decision, we can now promptly file to proceed with numerous policies that have been wrongly enjoined on a nationwide basis. And some of the cases we're talking about would be ending birthright citizenship, which now comes to the fore. That was meant for the babies of slaves. It wasn't meant for people trying to scam the system and come into the country on a vacation. This was, in fact, it was the same date, the exact same date, the end of the Civil War. It was meant for the babies of slaves, and it's so clean and so obvious. But this lets us go there and finally win that case, because hundreds of thousands of people are pouring into our country under birthright citizenship, and it wasn't meant for that reason. It was meant for the babies of slaves. So thanks to this decision, we can now promptly file to proceed with these numerous policies and those that have been wrongly enjoined on a nationwide basis, including birthright citizenship, ending sanctuary city funding, suspending refugee resettlement, freezing unnecessary funding, stopping federal taxpayers from paying for transgender surgeries, and numerous other priorities of the American people.
So there you have it, President Trump making it absolutely clear that this stuff was hamstringing his administration. And again, another just big win today. Lots of wins for America, lots of wins for the Constitution, and, of course, lots of wins for we the people. So I want to talk about America. I want to talk about a particular story when we come back. And this is the story, a true story, of U.S. Marines that were ambushed in Afghanistan. And this is a story I don't want you to miss. Don't go anywhere.
This is America at Night with Rich Valdez.
By the way, your ratings are up. Congratulations. I had somebody. It's always nice to check. I like to see, even if they're friends, I like to see how are they doing. Are people listening, right?
That's
but
right.
You're doing great.
America at Night with Rich Valdez.
There are so many aspects of what our brave men and women did that, because of the hatred of this press corps, are undermined because people are trying to leak and spin that it wasn't successful. It's irresponsible.
Welcome back. And I want to talk about how the fake news media is trying to undermine the Trump administration. And we saw this yesterday. That was a clip from Secretary Hegseth from yesterday. We had conversation about that. And these brave men and women are being undermined, right? They're trying to get Trump, but they're undermining the brave men and women that took on this mission. And as we're headed into Independence Day and celebrating America's birthday, I thought it was a good time to talk about some other brave men and women and other conflicts that have occurred. And I want to bring in our guest. Major Fred Galvin is a United States Marine. He's retired, and he's the author of A Few Bad Men, the true story of U.S. Marines ambushed in Afghanistan and betrayed in America. Major Galvin, welcome.
Thanks for having me again, Rich.
You bet. Pleasure to have you back. And I want you to share, some of your perspectives on how, this story that you lived is similar to what we're seeing, yesterday and this week in the media, and also as a reminder of this story, because it really was a remarkable story that you write about. Tell us more.
Well, there are similarities and differences. One small difference, ours was on the ground, but it was a task force of Marine special operators. I was in command of. I was on the patrol. Happened at 9 o'clock in the morning, broad daylight. People, enemy friendly, knew exactly what was going on. Fast forward 6 days ago, you had aviation forces doing a strategic mission, launching from other side of the globe to do precision targeting on a very well-known, well-rehearsed mission. That is something that our aviation forces have planned for a long time. No sooner than they get back, just like what happened to us, is 20 minutes after we were ambushed, blown up by a large suicide bomb, shot out on both sides of the road, dragged a vehicle across, trapping us in this kill zone, sniper fire on us. We did what United States Marines are trained to do when we're ambushed. You counterattack, and we won. But 20 minutes later, this is out on the BBC, followed by the New York Times, Washington Post. That went on. I'm not embellishing, but it went on until I served 7 more years, was pushed into retirement because, the military, not just the Taliban, but the military came after us. So the Few Bad Men, we have a group of leaders, as you've seen them all retire, the rank of 4-star generals. If you retire out of Tampa or Washington, D.C., from key assignments, you are welcomed into, oftentimes, the club, the military-industrial complex, which is not there to win wars, it's there to fight wars. And these products, which are very important and critical to our national security, can be abused, as it's been said ever since Eisenhower, when they take control. And but similar things had happened, not just with the press, but the press was a tool for people's political agendas in both of these cases. I'm talking ours in 2007 in Afghanistan, and I'm talking the one in Iran, where our brave warriors were slandered and discredited, and it's to make a mockery of the military strategy. And in 2007, Rich, we can rewind and see what was going on. There was an oncoming general presidential cycle between Senator McCain, Senator Obama, and we had a big surge in Iraq. It was very bloody at that time, 100,000 Americans in there, a lot of loss of life and limb. And then we get in this ambush. So the Taliban has this information warfare. And if you're voting for McCain, it was out there that this is what you're going to get more of. These Marines murdered women and children. They slaughtered them. They said that we were drunk. But they knew, just like we know now, that if you drop 6 GBUs, GBU 57s, that amount of ordnance, and the only tour I had outside of the operational forces while I was in the Marines was as the instructor at the Marines Aviation Center of Excellence, where we were calling in these types of airstrikes and watching these top guns for the Marine Corps and the amount of planning that they do, the amount of understanding they have to dive into in these classified weapon systems and how they have to work with the intelligence community on all this imagery. It's the level of sophistication and dedication is tremendous. And to think that we're just supposed to sit back and let our troops be slandered and the intelligence community. But you're right. There's a group of woke people who are still, they breeded them out, the real leaders out of the military and out of the intelligence communities. And you have some of these people that are leaking information, and these types of disgruntled employees that don't want America to be great. They don't want America to be safe. They need to be identified, and there are ways to do it. And we all, when I had a security clearance, and these people who have security clearances, as you know, Rich, you have to sign these documents, which is cradle to grave. If you divulge any of this information, and the people that are doing this, they know good and well that this information is classified. You can't give it to members of the media. You cannot give it to members of Congress that do not have a need to know.
Right.
So it's irregardless if they have a security clearance. You have to be read into these particular types of programs, these special access programs. But this weakens our nation because on the global stage, it makes it look like, no, we're not that strong. This
Right.
is a foolish. And
yeah, it reminds me, Major, of Jasmine Crockett saying, nobody told me. And of course, whether she has security clearance or not, she's, not read in on this particular mission. And of course, it makes all of us look silly. You're here dropping bombs with precision across the world. And then you've got the people right in your backyard saying, "Oh, well, I don't know if they hit. I don't know if we did this." It just makes you look very clownish, very amateur, very unpolished as the premier fighting force on the planet. So I definitely get that, folks. We're going to come right back and continue our conversation with Major Fred Galvin. He's the author of A Few Bad Men: The True Story of U.S. Marines That Were Ambushed in Afghanistan and Betrayed in America. And the juxtaposition we're making here is the betrayal that him and his guys received when they came back, where the government led a 12-year smear campaign against them that destroyed their careers, their reputations, and their families. We're going to learn, again, a little bit more about that story when we return. So stick with me, Major. We're coming right back with Major Fred Galvin and me, Rich Valdez.
Thanks for what you do. You have so many people. You ask the questions that if a viewer had a microphone, they would ask that question, and you seem to always ask it right at the right time. So God bless you, my friend.
America at Night with Rich Valdez.
If the intelligence reports conclude that Iran can enrich uranium to a level that concerns you, would you consider bombing the country again?
Without question, absolutely.
And have you had any conversations?
Turned out to be unbelievable. But, our incredible flyers and I call them the shots, these guys are unbelievable. Think from 52,000 feet, they hit the equivalent of a refrigerator door. They actually hit it right in the center, so it's much smaller than that. And just bomb after bomb going deeper, blowing up. Incredible thing. I don't know if you heard the general. He was very impressive. Raising Cane.
Raising Cane is the general, and the job they did was impressive. I mean, these are special operators that were there to do a job, to destroy this facility, and they did it. And when President Trump gives you that type of accuracy, telling you they hit the middle of a refrigerator door from, Lord knows how far up in the sky, quite the task, right? And this is, again, eerily reminiscent in some ways to what Major Fred Galvin went through with his group. You had the American Marine Special Operations Commander was prosecuted for doing exactly what they were sent to do, destroy the enemy. And this is, it's unfair to see that these guys who took out the Taliban when they were ambushed were charged with war crimes. And while, these stories are different, there's still the similarity that at home they were hating. So I want to come back and pick up where we left off. Major Galvin, thanks for being with us as we head into this week celebrating America's independence, America's birthday. And just tell us a little bit more of, some of what you were charged with, what your guys were charged with respect to the ambush, and how did the ambush go down?
Yes. Thanks, Rich. So the ambush, we entered this village. It's right on the border of Afghanistan and Pakistan. And if you rewind our history tapes, you remember we could not go into Pakistan. Obviously the Bin Laden raid was approved to go in there, but other than that, these were not approved. And we were in the area of the Tora Bora Mountains where Osama bin Laden was last sighted. And our mission was to go into Tora Bora Mountains, but in order to get there, we had to go through this village. So with that backdrop, you understand that if we can't get into Pakistan, that became what it was. It was a training sanctuary. That was where the Taliban and Al-Qaeda would go and radicalize and fully train these, whether they're freedom fighters or suicide bombers, that would all occur in southwest Afghanistan, or southwest Pakistan. They come right across the border. Thank goodness that America funded a paved highway, the first paved highway there, Highway 1. And so this became a very interesting transit point where the products to fuel terrorism, opium and poppy that was grown in Afghanistan, was being exported at a much faster rate. And that caused the resurgence of terrorists to be flown, because up until 2005, Afghanistan was victory. But in 2006, we ushered in this Hearts and Minds campaign, this counterinsurgency strategy made by General Petraeus and General Mattis, that had the same effect as it did in Vietnam. This winning hearts and minds failed both in Vietnam, proven to fail. Once it was ushered in at the end of 2006, the counterinsurgency strategy proved to have failed, just like they were begging Congress to continue the funding. I don't want to go down this rabbit hole, but you heard it year after year, keep the money going. These generals from Afghanistan, the 4-star generals saying we need to stay the course. This is working. The Afghan National Security Forces will be able to defend their country and fight off the Taliban. We saw what happened summer of 2021. The Taliban went through the Afghan National Security Forces like a hot knife through butter. But as we entered this town where we had incontrovertible intelligence of where 4 fully radicalized suicide bombers were in this house, we knew, but with this new counterinsurgency strategy, Rich, we couldn't do anything. We had to go literally, and I'm not pulling any punches with you, Rich. We had to go and meet with the tribal elders and have a shura and sit down and drink chai and discuss and maybe glean some more information so we could do this O.J. Simpson federal case to go in there. But again, what I was saying before, it's no embellishment. The goal at that point, the turning point of 2006, was not to win the war. It was to fight the war, to keep it going forever. And we saw in 2021, once we stopped, the tail in the Pentagon wags the dog in the White House, and they will find another. There we are, Ukraine. The money will keep on rolling, no matter what happens in the White House. So we go in there, we get blown up, shot at, as I previously described. Information warfare goes out immediately. That was reinforced by a large-scale riot in the nearest town of Jalalabad, reinforced by the Governor Sharzai protesting to Hamid Karzai, the president. He publicly condemned us. And then we had Army generals, Army colonels, even Marine. They they want us, and they were glad. The Army welcoming in the very first Marine Special Operations Task Force. Rich, that's like you inviting your girlfriend to meet your wife. We were not welcome company at all. And they were happy to see us not just go, but thrown off the balcony and get out of there. So we were launched. The Marine Corps found this very embarrassing. The very first time, the only time a Marine unit has been kicked out of combat by the Army. But the only other twist is the Marine Corps didn't want special operations to begin with. This was an arranged marriage by the Godfather, Donald Rumsfeld, that all the branches would increase their capacity for special operations. But the only one that never had, that was resisting, was the Marine Corps. So, and Donald Rumsfeld on 26 February 2006 was there to officiate this arranged marriage, which I was, in the company that I led, was the love child between Special Operations Command and the Marine Corps, was not wanted. But then the Marine Corps was like, this is an opportunity for us to scuttle this, because they did it under the direction of President Franklin Delano Roosevelt in World War II. He directed that they stood up the Marine Raiders. They fought for 2 years in the South Pacific. And in 1944, while the war was still going on and Roosevelt was still the president, they disbanded it. The Marine Corps commandants, with a stroke of a pen, one sentence, is not in the best interest of the Marine Corps to have an elite within an elite. Gone. The Marine Corps has never wanted it since. So they sent us to trial, the longest trial in Marine Corps history. I'll let your listeners read the book, A Few Bad Men, because it is unprecedented. What they did, you can Google search Fred Galvin, ABC News, and listen to a Marine sergeant who legally immigrated talk about the crime. They were trying to come after him. This is Naval Criminal Investigative Service, by threatening to deport his family. Many immigrants who don't study social studies or can't fully understand everything that's being read to them in high school may not understand that the 14th Amendment, whether you're naturalized or native born, you can't have your citizenship revoked. But just listen to this young sergeant discuss that, and it's in the book as well. But the unethical and immoral and illegal interrogations that Marines were forced upon to coerce them, put them in these situations of duress to get a statement signed that the prosecutors developed, that all came out on the witness stand. But guess what? Anytime there was a witness that had exculpatory evidence, they would move the media out of the courtroom. So although we are exonerated, the media, this is why it's so important what's going on with the media right now. Yeah. When the media doesn't get the full information, or they get the wrong information, or somebody's distorting and twisting the facts, giving only partial bits of, that is what creates doubt. And what has happened to our aviators just this last week in the media, that demoralizes people. Think of if you flew 36 hours round trip, you're dehydrated, flying at that altitude, the stress that's on you, and you come back. Just think of them and their families receiving this in the press like they had failed. And you're right. We're going into, 249 years celebration of the birth of our nation next week, a week from now. And, this is what all the courage that, the winter encampment at Valley Forge in 1777, 1778, where, they heard the reports and what's going on in Philadelphia, that the British were messing with American women, and we're being starved out there. But that courage to continue on, that was the same spirit that those men had when they were flying those missions, the same spirit that our men fought when we were ambushed. And it's what is unique about Americans is we will fight no matter how harsh the conditions. We'll cross whatever river, whatever body of water, no matter the wave condition, no matter the cold winter on Christmas Day, we'll fight and we'll win. But we don't need our fellow Americans sabotaging us and making it worse for our fighting forces and their families on information that, I'll tell you, I couldn't become an intelligence officer. Nobody's ever accused me of being that smart, but I married one. And you cannot get that type of level of intelligence and fidelity immediately afterwards. It's fused with, without going deep into it, multiple sources of intelligence on the ground, satellite imagery, you name it. But that level of information is not there. So somebody's making a wild guess on who's going to win this next year's Super Bowl. It's not reliable, but when it's put out there in the press, like Carlotta Gall continued to do in the New York Times against our task force, and then decided to write a couple pages in her book slandering us after the trial had ended several years, and she went back to some of the same Army general officers who took the stand and admitted that they were wrong.
It's tough enough with the enemies we have. We don't need more enemies at home. I hear what you're saying. Major Fred Galvin, retired from the United States Marine Corps, author of A Few Bad Men, the true story of U.S. Marines ambushed in Afghanistan and betrayed in America. Get the book wherever you can get it. Major, I want to thank you for joining us and celebrating Independence Day, and Godspeed to you, sir. Thank you.
Thank you, and God bless you, Rich.
You bet. God bless you, too. And amigos, your thoughts, your calls, your reactions, and everything else straight ahead.
This is America at Night with Rich Valdez. Call now, 833-4-VALDEZ. That's 833-482-5337. 833-4-VALDEZ. That's Valdez with an S.
Kind of at the heartbeat of America. You sit there in this radio studio and suddenly you hear voices. Mobile, Dallas, New York, Miami. And there's kind of a conglomeration of America all in one room.
Every Republican senator is committed. And, you could have a couple of grandstanders, in all fairness. You could have somebody else. And it's very dangerous because our country would go from being the most successful country in the world to who knows what happens with a 68%, think of it, 68% tax increase. That was given by the Democrats because they like high taxes. I don't know what happened. All my life, I'd grow up and I'd watch politicians talking. I'd say, oh, that's fun. And they were always saying, we will cut your taxes. We will cut your tax. I never heard it. They say, we will raise your taxes. And they elect people like this guy in New York that maybe has a chance. I find it hard to believe, but he maybe has a chance. They want to raise your taxes. So they want to see a 68% tax increase. That's more money than anybody could afford. You'd go into a depression if that ever happened. So I think there's a lot of pressure to get that approved.
That's President Trump again talking about the big, beautiful bill and, of course, making the Trump tax cuts permanent, which I think is a very good thing, as well as commenting on the radical crazy you have in New York. And he's referring to Zoran Mamdani, the Democrat socialist that has been nominated to run against Curtis Sliwa in the mayoral race this November. And I'm with Trump here. Maybe he has a chance, but I think it's kind of crazy, too. I don't see New Yorkers actually electing this guy. I think you've got about 80% of New Yorkers that did not vote in this election, 20% of them that did, and you're talking about a Democrat primary, so you've got an even smaller number of New York City that's voting. And, all right, so they pulled off an upset because they had two establishment candidates canceling out each other's votes, right? You had Eric Adams and Cuomo. All right, super. So those two guys are busy shooting each other in a circular firing squad. And this guy, Mamdani, sneaks in saying, hey, lefties, everybody else, young people, I'm going to give you something for nothing. And they buy it. All right, no problem. I think that's the same thing Sliwa's going to do when you get the three of them there beating each other up. And Sliwa's just going to come in and run with it and straight to Gracie Mansion. It's truly what I believe will happen. I could be wrong, but I don't see why I would be. I don't see why there would be such gravitas towards Mr. Mamdani. I just don't see it. But the big, beautiful bill scheduled to go for a vote very soon, and we might have no tax on tips, no tax on overtime, and no tax on no tax on tips, and then the permanent Trump tax cuts. So I think that's a good thing. And my young daughter, who is still in college, she started a new job over the summer, and she tells me, she's like, Dad, in this job I can get overtime. She's like, I've worked a lot of overtime. And she got her paycheck, and she's like, they took more money from the overtime than from anything else. And I said, oh, aren't you glad you voted for Trump? And she's like, but when does that go into effect? Because they're taking my money. So I'm happy that this will soon be the law of the land. And even if it comes, a little later than sooner, it can't happen soon enough. Let's hit the phones, 833-482-5337, 833-4-Valdez. Let's go to Ed calling us from Agra, Kansas, KRVN. Ed, go right ahead, sir.
Hi, Rich. What's that eldest daughter doing since Liberty University?
Oh, so yeah, she's my ex-wife lives in Florida, and she's been staying with her. She got a job over there, and the world is her oyster, brother. She's enjoying herself. She's gonna do a little travel as well, and I've told her, take it easy. I started my life very young. By the time I was 16, I had my first business. By the time I was 23, I was married. By 24, I had a kid. By 25 and a half, I had 2 kids. And it was great because now I'm 47 and I've got, kids that are almost done with school. But at the same time, I didn't do a whole lot of living then, so I'm trying to play catch up now. And I'm telling them, don't be in a rush like I was in a rush. Do all your living now. So my hope is that she'll get to really explore life and do what she wants and, have that ease and that lack of pressure that I quite frankly didn't have because real life caught up to me really quick. But Ed, thank you for asking. That's really kind of you. I appreciate it. And folks, we'll come back to the rest of your calls and so many more when we return. Don't go anywhere.
This is America at Night with Rich Valdez.
This is a huge win for the Trump administration because the court has essentially kneecapped lower courts from stopping this administration when it engages in lawless and unconstitutional behavior. And Lisa makes a really important point. This is all happening in an environment where the Trump administration is not only going after undocumented persons and deporting people without the benefit of due process. They're doing so while they are also upending the legal landscape, but making it harder for pro bono outfits to secure the help they need from law firms to bring these suits. And now with
bringing lawsuits, pro bono stuff, that is Melissa Murray. She's former law clerk to Sotomayor, Justice Sotomayor, and she was on MSNBC today saying that the Supreme Court essentially kneecapped the lower courts from stopping lawless Trump. And I think that, in effect, is the problem, right? Is it the job of the lower courts to stop lawless Trump? Or is it their job to handle the stuff that's on their docket that comes before them? Now, clearly, their job is to what was clarified today, right? If it's something that has nationwide impact, then it should go before the full Supreme Court, not to the lowest level of a federal court or, one of the lower levels, the district court. So, I mean, maybe she thinks more of herself than she is. I don't know. Maybe a lot of us do that. But when it comes to the law, I think there's a framework there. If you walk around in real life thinking you're bigger than you are, that's fine. You're just an egomaniac. But if you're an egomaniac and you're a lawyer, it can prove to be not so fruitful because you will lose cases just like people were losing today. But that wasn't Trump, right? Trump was the one winning today, the American people winning today. A big win for the Constitution today. So anyway, we'll continue our conversation on all of that stuff as well as a lot more when we come back. I want to get into what's going on with masculinity in America as well as we continue our celebration of America. So keep it locked right here with me, Rich Valdez. Don't go anywhere. We're coming right back.
Live from the city that never sleeps. 17 miles from Madison Square Garden, New York City. It's America at Night with Rich Valdez. America's favorite late night talk program featuring interesting guests from around the world and calls from across America. And now, here is your host, Rich Valdez.
Hi there, good evening, and what's up, America? I am Rich Valdez, Valdez with an S, at Rich Valdez on all of the social media. It's Friday night. We're live. We're national. Happy to be here with you 7 minutes past the top of the hour. And the phone number, if you want to join us, it's 833-482-5337, 833-4Valdez. And where have the men gone in America? Well, I think they're making a comeback. We're going to get into that momentarily. Plus, what also made a comeback today? The rule of law. 5 big areas of victory in the Supreme Court today. And big deal. The whole thing is a big deal. President Trump weighing in on this and saying that this was a huge win for America, a huge win for the Constitution. And I think he's right? I think it's 100% right that this was a big win. But Trump made it very clear that the idea of some of these things, right? You've got birthright citizenship was at the crux of it. And it wasn't that particular case, right? Or matter. It was the fact that he wrote an executive order about it, and they challenged it by using a nationwide injunction. And that was what was on the docket today, and that's where the court weighed in and said, no, the lower courts cannot just stop the president from doing what he's doing all across the board, and just because of one particular case that is before them. So that was, again, a big win for the president today. And he weighed in on a number of things, right? President Trump saying that this was good for America. This is good, saying that cartels have used birthright citizenship to get people into America for a very long time. And this is, I think, a very important point, that they've been doing this, right? They use the social safety net that we have in America, not just birthright citizenship, but that's definitely, I think, probably chief amongst the reasons. But you name it. You tell somebody from a war-torn country or an extremely poor country that is trying to find a better life for them or for their family, and tell them, hey, look, you come here and you can do X, Y, and Z and make it. A lot of people are willing to do X, Y, and Z to make it. And when you say, look, and if you can't, while you're getting on your feet, they're going to put you up in a hotel. They're going to give you money. They're going to give you a debit card with some cash assistance on it. Sounds like a match made in heaven for a lot of people who need help. I get it. But it's our job to vet the people that we allow into the country. We can't control people wanting to come into the country. It's a great country. And I think that's part of what President Trump was talking about today when he was talking about the cartels and birthright citizenship. But anyway, there's that. There's also another story that I think is a big story on the trade front. Trump signing a deal with China while ending the deal and all talks with Canada. And doing that because he says, well, I have the tweet here in front of me. It's right here. Trump putting on Truth Social, we have just been informed that Canada, a very difficult country to trade with, yada, yada, yada. He goes on to say they charge our farmers 400% tariffs in some cases. And ultimately he says they're copying the European Union by putting a tax on American technology companies. This is a direct and blatant attack on our country. And he's right. And he says a number of other things. It's a hard-hitting tweet. But the reality is Trump is putting pressure where pressure needs to be placed. Simple as that. He did the same thing with NATO when he was there a couple of years back. They laughed, they smirked. He came back this time, and they literally called him daddy, right? So it's clear to me, even those that didn't want to take Trump seriously in the beginning, they have to now because they realize he's holding the cards. He's the one. He now has the Congress that he, perhaps didn't have at that time. And he had it for like 2 out of the last 4 years, the first time around. But he's got a majority now. A thin one, but a majority nonetheless. One that is effective, one that's getting things done, one that's hopefully about to pass the big, beautiful bill. And I think that's important that we get that passed, because that's the bottom line, right? People want, this is what they voted for. They voted for no tax on tips. They voted for no tax on overtime. They voted to extend the Trump tax cut so that we don't have a 68% increase in everything, right? I mean, in effect, that's what would happen. People would pay that much more. It would be a 68% increase in taxes. That would be brutal. We'd be worse off than the socialist madmen in New York City. So a couple of things to keep in mind there. Let me see. There was another topic that I wanted to cover here. Oh, the stock market. This is a big one as well. Inflation has remained cool, as the economists like to say, has not heated up. Let me see here. Big, beautiful bill gaining steam, headed towards the Senate for where it has to get, and approved and head to the president's desk. And the golden age, stocks hitting a record high. This was an interesting one here. Let's see. U.S. stocks climbing to all-time highs Friday. This also happened on Thursday, yesterday. And inflation cooling despite the tariffs, the end of the Iran-Israel war, and growing signs that President Trump's tax legislation is advancing in Congress. The S&P 500 rose to finish at a record 6137. And let me see, the NASDAQ Composite and the Dow Jones Industrial Average also closed at historic highs, powered by gains in technology, energy, and industrial shares. And we saw the gains in energy at the beginning of the week when everybody thought the markets were going to crash because of what happened with Iran. And voila, here we are a week later. So some saying it's going to take it a week to materialize. Maybe. All I know is next week, I know I'm not going to be around next week, and it's 4th of July, and I think a lot of people are going to be taken off for the holiday. And all I can tell you is I think people are going to be happy at their 4th of July barbecue. I don't think people are going to be lamenting, unless they're just lamenting over the fact that their guy didn't win, that Kamala Harris is not president, and that Donald Trump did win. But I don't think you could be really sad about outcomes. The outcomes here seem positive to me. Tax cuts, those are always good, right? Even if you're a Democrat and you think, oh, it's tax cuts for his rich friends, for the billionaires, like Bernie Sanders, tax cuts for the billionaires. That's fine. Give them tax cuts too. Everybody needs a tax cut. I don't care who gets it. Most poor people don't pay taxes. That's at least income taxes. That's why they're poor, right? When I was poor once, I didn't pay any income taxes. I remember when I started my business and I started to make money, all of a sudden, I paid a whole bunch of money in income taxes. That's just how it works, right? They become the government becomes your like silent partner. So I get it. I know how this stuff works, and it's a good thing. It's a good thing to be able to make money. It's a good thing to have health, to be able to provide for yourself and others. I'm not complaining. I'm just saying I think people are going to be happy at their 4th of July barbecue. And that's not a bad thing. We're going to get to your calls, your thoughts, your reactions. I see we have some calls on the line already. Thanks for your patience. We're going to get with you momentarily. Plus, we're going to talk about masculinity and what is the future of masculinity. So we're going to talk a little bit about that as well. So keep it locked right here. Don't go anywhere. I'm Rich Valdez.
This is America at Night with Rich Valdez.
You're one of the best voices in radio for just giving reality to people and keeping it real. I feel like you're not one-sided at all.
America at Night with Rich Valdez.
According to the Department of Homeland Security, more than 1,600 people have been taken into custody in L.A. alone in the last 3 weeks. An all-out blitz promised by border czar Tom Homan at the start of the raids.
Are there more days coming ahead?
Absolutely. We're going to be out there every day.
President Trump reiterating today he wants to deport 1 million undocumented immigrants a year.
What we're doing is we're really going after the criminal aliens, of which we have plenty to work with.
So, of course, that's a clip of of what's going on lately in California. 1,600 people locked up. And I would say if we had a few more masculine men, maybe that wouldn't be the case, right? There's a bunch of us, Governor Schwarzenegger coined them, girly men, right? These are girly men running around, waving all sorts of flags, doing all sorts of things, throwing rocks at the cops, and then running away. And I want to get to the bottom of that. Why do we have this crisis of masculinity in America? Why do we have these little girls or little boys playing with the cops and getting into these silly fights that they constantly lose? What's the story here? And I want to know why we're not embracing masculinity the way we're supposed to. So to do that, I want to have a conversation with our next guest, Braden Sorbo. He's the author of Embrace Masculinity, Lifting Men Up in a World That Pushes Them Down. Braden Sorbo, welcome.
Well, thank you for having me, sir. I'm excited to be here.
Talk to us about what's going on in the world of masculinity.
Well, the world of masculinity, or a lack thereof, is kind of the world that we live in now, unfortunately. And obviously, it is not all doom and gloom. We do have this kind of revival, which we'll get into a little bit later. But just to lay the foundation, the groundwork to cover our bases, masculinity has been under attack for several decades at this point. What started as this slow, kind of gradual degradation, if you will, of tradition and virtues has ramped up in the past years, where the feminist movement combined with the power of Hollywood and even the music industry and some government programs has essentially eradicated what men stood for, which was responsibility. If you give a man purpose, then you give his life meaning, and he actually goes and does something with it. But if you take away all purpose and meaning for a man, then he has no reason to grow up. And so that's what we have today. We have this kind of generation of what I like to call the Neverland, the Peter Pan boys. They're lost on the island, and they're stuck in the little adolescent stage because they don't have a reason to grow up. And so that's sort of where we're at now.
Now, you've penned a piece in BizPac Review, an op-ed that's really interesting, talking about illegal immigration and how it's flooded America's liberal cities. Tell us more.
So the article that you referenced is titled "Go Home, You're Not Welcome Here," which is a very harsh kind of title. I'm sure that many people read that and immediately scoff. But if they dive into the actual meat and bones, the meat and the potatoes, the article itself deals with the influx of illegal immigration and people who come with zero pride for the country that they're entering. Right? I go back and I reference the Afrikaners who came and escaped the persecution in South Africa, waving American flags, proud of this country that they can now call home, and compared it to the violent ICE protests that were taking place all over the world, but specifically in the liberal cities like Los Angeles and over in Chicago or New York City, where things were getting violent. Police cars were set on fire, bricks were thrown through windows, people were waving flags to countries that they didn't even want to go back to. And so the point of the article was, if you're so proud of the country you're from that you would rather burn the American flag and wave your own, then you should go home. Because I don't know about you, but I want to be surrounded with people who have similar values. That doesn't mean similar ideas. This doesn't mean I want to live in an echo chamber, but I want people who care about this country and want it to be better, even if we disagree on how we might get there.
Sure. Yeah, it makes all the sense in the world to me. I think part of the consternation and the radical violence that was going on came from people that believe that, most of Southern California was once Mexico, and they're, in effect, trying to reclaim it back for Mexico. I don't know if it's I want to stay here versus go home argument as much as it is really more like a civil war, like, hey, this is ours, and we're taking it back. And that's even more egregious, in my opinion.
Oh, without a doubt. And if that is the case, which it looks like it certainly very well might be, we have to do something about it. Because if the idea of colonialism was you go, and just like all of the Native American tribes fought each other, were nomadic, they took advances towards each other to take new land and all of that stuff, and American settlers, or colonial settlers, I should say, came in and were able to overpower them. If these people have the same mindset of survival of the fittest, then we have to join them on their playing field. This isn't the same as a discussion where, someone says an ad hominem attack and you don't want to stoop to their level. No, if these people are on the level of violence in the sense that they want to, quote unquote, retake what once belonged to Mexico, then we have to treat them accordingly. That is the only way to survive and protect your homeland. I mean, we have soldiers who take an oath. They are to protect this country from terror, both foreign and domestic. And so that means that there is going to be problems on American soil where something is going to have to happen. We can't just have this perpetual cycle of, let them just go do it and they'll get it out of their system. Yeah. We don't know that for certain, especially when these people are claiming to want to behead or destroy or hurt those that disagree with them.
Yeah, I agree with you 100%, brother. Folks, we're on with Braden Sorbo. He's the author of Embrace Masculinity, Lifting Men Up in a World That Pushes Them Down. And as we're having this conversation on the culture and what's going on, it just rings true to me that I feel like there's been a somewhat of a resurgence of manly men, right? Not girly men, but manly men in the last couple of years. And mainly, I would say it's amongst Generation Z. They seem to have really, taken on the John Wayne persona. Have you noticed the same?
Yes. I love when we're talking about, obviously, laying the perspective for this topic. We mentioned just this idea of masculinity being under attack, and it's been generations of this slow degradation. And what's happened is the pendulum on that side has swung so far that it is forcefully swinging back to the right. And so because of that, Gen Z, the men in Gen Z specifically, are farther right-leaning, more conservative than any generation that America has ever seen. This is more conservative than the men who were willing to die on the beaches of Normandy, more conservative than the men who went and fought in, the Middle East or Korea or Vietnam. This is more conservative than any generation in the history of this country. And the reason for that is because it is the natural reaction for the violent push that the left has had. And so this is inherently a good thing, but left unchecked can turn sour. And so I like to tell people that there has to be an objective moral truth that we adhere to, that we hold ourselves to, because if we don't, masculinity, true masculinity, unchecked, is that of domineering aggression. Because the goal of masculinity, the pinnacle for any man, whether that man be Christian, atheist, secular, whatever, is longevity. At the end of the day, when I die, my car, my house, and my finances don't go into the grave with me. What happens is my bloodline is carried on through my children.
Exactly. It's carrying on for the next generation. Braden, stick with me. Folks, we're coming right back with Braden Sorbo, author of Embrace Masculinity, Lifting Men Up in a World That Pushes Them Down. And we're going to continue the conversation on masculinity, what to expect, and the rest of his op-ed. Keep it locked right here. It's Braden Sorbo coming back with me, Rich Valdez. Don't go anywhere.
Is America at Night with Rich Valdez.
So what do you think is different today than, what part do you mean it wasn't this way for all of history? Because wouldn't you say for most of history, men, were the head of their household, they did provide to some extent? I know there was the dowry that women brought, but it came from her dad, not her.
Right. Well, okay, let's go back to maybe the 1970s. I wasn't necessarily alive then, but I'm saying if you talk about, back then it was, make love, not war. I think that we were kind of a little bit more headed towards equality back then. I think that, look at it this way. You had, during the Vietnam War, you had women actually marching for, men being sent off to die in war.
Oh, so I see. And now today it's you're not a real man if you don't fight in war. Okay,
Not
I see
only
what you're saying.
not only that, but I mean, look at the male deletion rate, right? And it's like, okay, so why aren't women marching for those lives today?
Why aren't women marching for those lives is the question. And that's a conversation from Pearl Davis's podcast. And a good question I think that we should continue to talk about right here with Braden Sorbo. He's our guest, and he's the author of Embrace Masculinity, Lifting Men Up in a World That Pushes Them Down. Braden Sorbo, why aren't we celebrating men like that anymore?
Well, because men like that are the reasons that societies get built, right? When I write in the book, I say when men get together, communities are formed, countries are built. And so men inherently pose a threat to any evil ruler who wants to remain in power. If you're a bad guy, you will immediately target the men. That's what we see all throughout the history of the world. Right? You have three different ways that the evil ruler will do this. First, they will try to use and harness the strength of the men. That's what the pyramids were built, right? The slavery. And we see that all throughout the history, the course of our nation or, other worlds. They're harnessing the strength. And then you have the pacification. If the harnessing doesn't work, if you can make them complacent, then they won't rise up against you, which is what we see with the bread and circuses during the Romans and, the NFL and other distractions in the world today. Then lastly, if neither of those first two options work, you have the last one, which is the most drastic, and that is to kill the men. And we see this once again, say during the Exodus, with the Pharaoh saying, all right, kill all the baby boys so that they don't even have the chance to grow up and revolt against me. And we have that in America today with a certain extent with the spiritual destruction of masculinity. We have pornography rampant in our society today, pushed through music, pushed through the media, pushed through the content we consume on our phones. And so there are studies that are saying that 85% of men in America today have admitted to watching porn within the last month, which is a shockingly high number. And what that does is it spiritually kills men, where they become this kind of complacent slave to a system that makes them inferior and makes them feel as though they are not good enough to actually accomplish or achieve anything. It's why 18 to 25-year-olds aren't approaching women. Nearly half of those men in that age range, 45% to be exact, of 18 to 25-year-olds have not approached a woman in real life. That is a problem. We are slowly replacing ourselves in society with other things. And so masculinity is under attack because bad rulers fear what good men will do.
Really good point right there. And I want to ask you, on that same thinking, that same line of thought, in addition to pornography and the spiritual destruction that goes with it, what are your thoughts about just coaxing or teaching young men to think that they can be young women? Is that not also emasculating or demasculating society?
Yeah, without a doubt. It's one of the stupidest things that we've allowed to kind of infiltrate and destroy the system that America was built on, which was traditional values. I mean, you have the feminist movements, which have for eons, nearly a century preached, or over a century, preached that women are second-class citizens and that they need to go fight to sit at a corporate desk and work a 9-to-5 under fluorescent lighting, that they need to go fight in wars, they need to go do these things which are inherently bad for people to be doing, let alone women, where we had a system that upheld individuals with a unique value where nobody was better than his fellow American. That was what we had in place. And if you take it to a biblical stance, I like to tell people that Eve was not taken from Adam's foot so that he would walk over her. He wasn't taken from Adam's head so that she could lord it over him. She was taken from his rib to be equal with him. Right? Just because we have different roles in society doesn't mean that people are inherently better or worse. I tell everybody, look, Jesus is not better or worse than God the Father, and yet Jesus submitted to the will of the Father for the betterment of humanity. There is an order in the universe that we cannot fight, no matter how hard we try, no matter what we do. It is there, it is permanent, it is ever unchanging, and we can't force something to come of it. And that is what society has done. For the past century, we have tried to tell God, no, this order doesn't work for us. We're going to do it ourselves. And you lead to this epidemic of young men thinking that they could become women and beat other women in women's sports. And obviously, that is a failing idea. I mean, we could see the poor fruits of it today.
Oh, yeah. We just saw the head of the International Boxing Organization call for the International Olympic Committee to revoke the gold medal that was given to Imani Khalif after failing a second gender exam, proving that she has male chromosomes and saying, hey, you're a guy and you shouldn't have gotten that medal. So, I mean, you're right. These things are out of control. Braden Sorbo, I guess bottom line to you here, what's the solution that you're putting forth in the book?
The solution that I put forth in the book is twofold. On one aspect, because obviously there's two genders and only two genders, is one, it's for men, a godly handbook. It is a guide on how to live, the importance of fraternity, the necessity of marriage, and the idea that you as a man have an inherent value, because people want to feel wanted. Right? The bottom line is we as humans desire that other people would need us. And so for men, it teaches you that, well, that is a wonderful goal to have. You cannot have people rely on you if you yourself are not reliable. And for young women, it serves as a checklist or a discernment tool to see if the people that they're surrounding themselves with match the criteria talked about in the book. And so I kind of go over everything. The porn, like we mentioned earlier today, I talk about the media, I talk about the pharmaceutical industry, I talk about the destruction of masculinity, and finally how to rebuild it, and that if we don't rebuild it, society as we know it will collapse. I mean, America is at the precipice of falling. Every other great nation in the history of the world has reached the moral degradation that America is currently at and never recovered. And so if we are following track, we will not recover from this. However, America is a nation that is full of firsts. We are the first nation to do numerous things, and we have done it well historically. And so hope is not lost. We have the next generation. They are willing to fight. They are ready to pick themselves up by their bootstraps and take this uphill battle, and people need only support them.
Outstanding analysis. The book sounds like a real winner here. Folks, get a copy of this book, Embrace Masculinity, Lifting Men Up in a World That Pushes Them Down. The author is Braden Sorbo. You can catch him online. He's got a whole mess of social media followers. He's 23 years old. He's an actor. He's an author. And you can hear him giving this cultural commentator all over the place. Braden Sorbo, thanks for being with us. You're a gentleman, a scholar, and a patriot. Godspeed, my man.
Well, thank you so much for having me. And if anyone wants to, they can go to sorbostudios.com. And if they use my last name, Sorbo, at checkout, I'll give them 20% off just for your show.
Outstanding. Look at that. Well, I appreciate it again. And amigos, I want to know what you think. What do you think about this? Is masculinity under attack? Can we bring back the John Wayne era? I want to go to you guys, your thoughts, your calls, and more. Don't go anywhere.
This is America at Night with Rich Valdez. Call now, 833-4-VALDEZ. That's 833-482-5337. 833-4-VALDEZ. That's Valdez with an S. Now, 833-4-VALDEZ. That's 833-482-5337. 833-4-VALDEZ. That's Valdez with an S.
All right, let's go to George, Berwyn, Illinois, WLS. George, go right ahead.
Hey, Rich, thank you for taking my call. Earlier, I heard you say that you were kind of saying that the right wing or the media, the popular media, was undermining the pilots and all the military with this bombing of Iran. But I don't seem to connect that. They didn't say anything prior to that. They're talking about basically facts that were given out by the government themselves. They're not making any of this stuff up. They're simply reporting what was told to them. So how is this undermining?
I'll explain it to you. So the media works in a very interesting way, right? When it comes to fake news, this is not just they drink the haterade and run with it. It's a whole way it works, and you have to. There's a lot of books on this, but if you look at the way it is, many of the people in government are married to people in the media. So there's these already incestuous connections. So what happens here is a preliminary report is leaked. Right? Now, leaking means that somebody in the government didn't issue this and say, hey, this is for public consumption and we want you guys to see this. No, this is called, I have something that I'm going to release from the government that I want you in the media to run with and tell everyone about. Now, this is sabotage, right? So they have this preliminary report that is not based on the best data and wasn't cleared with any of the intel agencies. And it gets to New York Times and CNN. Why? Because they have a bloodlust for Trump. They don't like Trump. And if you can give them something negative that they can report, they're going to report it. And that's exactly how it went down. So they go ahead and report this. But it turns out that this information isn't accurate because it wasn't fully vetted. It only happened one day after the fact. So it said that it was inconclusive and that they didn't know, they couldn't prove that this stuff was done and destroyed and obliterated. Turns out after the general weighs in and the secretary weighs in and more information is put out there, it's pretty much incontrovertible that with the amount of firepower that was dropped there, what could survive, right, at any depth, or at least at the depth that they're questioning. So it's not simply that, there was information available to the media, they took the ball and ran with it and reported it. If it were, then they'd be doing their job. But in this case, it was specifically a leak. And a lot of times these leaks are two-sided, right? This is the media saying, "Can you give me something? Give me something. I'll say it wasn't you. We'll say it was leaked. We'll say it was whatever," right? Because they're constantly fishing for stories to create these opportunities. So it's really a disastrous marriage, I'm going to say, between the deep state, those that are in the government that want to sabotage and undermine President Trump, and their counterparts in the media is probably the best way to describe it. And hopefully that made some sense. George, thanks for the call. I appreciate the question. WLS in the building. And I want to go to John, Brunswick, Ohio, WNIR. John, go right ahead.
Hi. Hey, one point I want to make quickly. In 20 years of calling talk radio, I have never once hung up during a conversation. So if I'm lost without a closing comment, it's because my mic was cut.
Okay, great.
I do want to make a point about Kilmar Garcia.
Sure.
He's getting his due process, and if he ends up deported, that'll be fine with me. What's not fine with me is how many people were vilified for simply pointing out that Trump's photo of Garcia was altered to include MS-13.
Right. Well, again, I think it's a mischaracterization to say that it was altered. I think there was a label on it, right? There was symbols that signify MS-13. It's the MS-13 tattoo that they use on knuckles. It's not exclusive to him. Many people use that same tattoo as their MS-13 kind of ID tattoo. And in the photo that everybody's, making a big deal about, it's labeled. This is not altering. It's not doctoring. I don't think these are the right words. This is like, a label, like any other label one would use.
Trump said it was real during an interview, and it sparked a debate across the country.
Right, well, I think what Trump said was that it says MS-13, and it's clear as day. And I think when you have the intelligence, remember, the president gets a daily briefing. So these individuals that get this information, they know what they're talking about. And I've played some audio here, and we actually had a couple of experts that dealt with gangs for 10, 20 years on the show to explain that anybody who knows anything about this type of work in law enforcement and understands gangs knows that it's clear as day that means MS-13. That's what it says. So I think when Trump is saying to Terry Moran, who I think ceremoniously or maybe unceremoniously lost his job at ABC News, the people are trying to take it out of character or out of context, I should say, for the purpose of just trying to make Trump look sort of incompetent or to make him look like he was telling a half-truth or a mistruth or something like that. And I don't think either of them is true. I think he was clearly saying, it says MS-13. This is what the M, this is the S, this is the 1, this is the 3. That's what that means. And the fact that there were small letters above it that clearly don't even match the font, and it's clear that it's a label, this is like a non-argument. It's like we're splitting hairs that don't even exist.
People across the country were led to believe that those characters
were you led to believe
that?
that? Because I think
point.
somebody has to be a special type of idiot to believe that they were led to believe anything. It was clear as day to me that this was a label.
The calls were made all across the country on talk radio. The comments were made all over the internet to people who simply pointed out what you just said were vilified by Trump supporters and Trump pundits.
So what? Who cares?
The truth matters. Facts matter. Trump. Now,
that is the truth, and those are the facts. No,
but the Trump camp should have acknowledged from day one that MS-13 did not exist on his knuckles. They made the
for
opposite
what
argument.
purpose? The whole thing was a setup. Don't you see? It's a ruse to try to get him to say something that he shouldn't even be saying. He said what he said, and that's it. To try and egg him on and try and get into a circuitous conversation to say, but you don't realize that these are all gotcha questions. These are set up questions that are designed to try and trip him up. I would never take that bait, and nor should he.
He did not acknowledge that
he should not
MS-13
acknowledge. He'd
was
have to be a
added.
serious pendejo to acknowledge that. Why on earth would he acknowledge that? He's the president of the United States. He made a statement. He's a grown man. Because there's some idiot out there that has his panties in a twist and has an estrogen level that's through the roof and a testosterone level that's through the floor, has nothing to do with what I said. People can't handle it. They can't handle it.
You go with that attacking the messenger crap over issues that have nothing to do with sexuality.
I'm talking to the messenger.
He denied it in an interview. And millions
I
of
saw
Trump
the interview, John. Take your panties out of the bunch, iron them out, be a man, grow up, and just take it like it is. He said what he said. It's all on tape. People decide, and we move on.
Made all across the country on talk radio, vilifying people, calling them liars for saying that MS-13 did not exist on his knuckles.
Are you going to cry, sir? Because I have to go to a break, but if you're going to break out into tears, I'll try and keep you on.
Just as long as you want.
All right, can you make a different point than the one you're making? Because you keep making the same point.
Sure, I'll make a different point if you want.
Go ahead, 20 seconds.
Saying that we need to return to masculinity is fine, but demeaning true gays and true lesbians and people with sexuality disorders, that's not fine. That's going too far. Because some of those people are legit and doing the best they can.
Yeah, listen, I pray for them, and I hope that they are well. Total agreement with you there. I don't want anybody who's struggling with their gender issue to be sick. I want them to be well. And I think you and I have landed on some common ground. John in Brunswick, Ohio, WNIR, thanks for the conversation. Amigos, we come right back.
This is America at Night with Rich Valdez.
All right, amigos, to the phones we go. Speed round. Tony, Montreal, calling out of Vermont, WVMT. Go for it.
So I'm just going to quickly mention Trump versus Casa, where Alito says, but sometimes they're wrong. And all Article 3 judges are vulnerable and think that they're in their own kingdom. That's why they lost, Rich, and they deserve to lose because they're running their own fiefdom.
You're right.
Kingdom.
They deserve to lose. Tony, thank you for your call and your comment. Always spot on. Amigos, hasta la próxima. Take care. Good night, and God bless you, America. I am off for a few days celebrating America's birthday, but you guys are in good hands, and I can't wait to be back with you. God bless you, America. I'm Rich Valdez.